To go. Those are 12. Those are 13. 7 more, push it. 6 to go. Last 5. 4 to go. 4 more. Body weight, up or 2. Last 3. 2 to go. On to the last one. And finish. Good job. 20-second breather. We start our second set. Are you okay? I want you to try and target to do at least 3 sets of this workout, okay? Access the workout on Facebook, download it, watch it with your family, do it together with your friends, just repeat it. You get? Good stuff. 20-second breather, start a second workout. Good job. So as we ankle jumps, okay? So, putting the legs together, just jump. 1, let's go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 20 seconds, breather, then get push-ups. Good job. Are we okay? Are we okay? This second set, tunaongeza one workout, tunaongeza mountain climbers. We're only doing 50 mountain climbers, okay? You good? Sawa sawa. So after push-ups, tunaingia mountain climbers, 50 reps. Tuende kazi. Push-ups, 15 count. I'm ready. Let's go. 1, 2, go on your pace. Beginners, you can give me at least between 5 to 10. Intermediate, 20, 7, 8, 9, 10, 5 to go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good job. Back it to hapo chini. Breathe for 20 seconds. Tunaingia 50 mountain climbers. Alright. 50 peke yake. Tunapatia mingi. Breathe. Good job. I want you to push your cardio, eh? Let's just kupatia break mrefu sana. Sawa, our time is up. 50 mountain climbers. If you're counting a single leg, come on, count 1, 2. You're counting to 100. I'm counting double, okay? Good job. Let's go. 1, 2. Give me your pace. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are 20. Push it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are 40. 10 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 50. Good job. I'm going to give you a 30-second break, okay? I'll add up 10 more seconds for you so that you can get enough air. So breathe, relax. From there, tunaingia squats. 30 squats. Good job. 30 seconds are up. 30 squats. Are you ready? Let's go. 1, 2, 3. Push it. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are 20. 10 more. Push it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Last one. 20 seconds. Breather. Take your time. Breathe. Relax. So you get the kettlebell swings. If you like it, the water bottle swing. Okay. If you have a kettlebell, kindly use it. Whatever weight you have. Watch out your posture. We're only doing 20 reps. Our timer is up. Yeah, let's push that cardio. That's what I'm looking for as well. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's go. 6, 7, 8, 9. These are 10. 10 to go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Good job. 20 seconds breather. How are you feeling? 20 seconds breather to gear dips. 20 reps. Remember, you have to do a minimum of 3 sets, okay? Download the workout. Please repeat it. Please. Good job. Our timer is up. And your dips. 20 reps. Are you ready? Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Push it. Beginners, you can give me 10. Intermediate, give me 10, 15. Those are 10. 10 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good job. 20 seconds breather. Tunaingia burpees. Okay? 10 burpees. Today we are not going crazy with burpees. Just 10 burpees. Just breathe. Good job. Breathe. Good job. Breathe in with your nose. Breathe out with your mouth. Fungua mdomo, okay? Breathe in. Out. Burpees. I only want 10 burpees. Okay? Are you ready? Let's go. 1, 2. Go on your pace. Okay, go on your pace. That's why I'm taking it easy. 4, 5. Good job. 6, 7, 8. 2 more. 9. Last one. 10. Good job. From there to the jumping jacks. 40 counts. How are you feeling? Yeah, hata mimi na hema. Talk to me, hata mimi na hema. Relax. 20 seconds to breathe. Okay? Jumping jacks. Then one last workout, lunges. Woo! Feels good. Our timer is up. Jumping jacks. You ready? 40, okay? Let's go. 1, 2, 3. Those are 10. Those are 20. 20 to go. Those are 30, 10 more. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. March down. Good job. 20 seconds breather. Swing your lunges. And after the lunges, I want you to do the third set. I want you to do the fourth set. Okay? But if you can do 5 sets, why not? Okay? Good job. Just breathe. 20 lunges. Our timer is up. We start. Let's go. That's 1. Make sure you step quietly, okay? 2, 3. If you have some dumbbells, you can be holding on your arms. Up. There's a 5. There's a 6. There's a 7. There's a 8. There's a 9. There's a 10. 1. 9 to go. 2. There's a 3. 4. There's a 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. Last one. And 10. Good. I'm taking you to the push-ups. So, 15 push-ups together. Then we endelea na mountain climbers and you finish up the whole set. Are we good? 15 push-ups. Beginners, 5 to 8. Intermediate from 7. Advanced, 12 to 15. Malizia strong, okay? Good job. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good job. Are you okay? Tunasema nini? Mountain climbers. Haya. Tufanye mountain climbers pamoja. We're doing 30 now. Going all the way till the last set, you're going to be doing 30 mountain climbers, okay? So we do 30 mountain climbers, then we stretch. Then I hope you guys will be able to download the workout and follow it, okay? Our 20 seconds is up. 30 mountain climbers. If you're counting single, we're counting 60. We ready? Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are 10, 20 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are 20, 10 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30. We're doing a stretch, then we call it a day, okay? Turn the apple. Nice one. Let's go the other leg. Same. Pull it back. Good. Do more apple. Reach for your toes. And breathe. Good stuff. The other leg. Just breathe. Good. Shoulder up. And belly. Good job, up. Take them backwards. Good. Twist the neck round. The other side. Breathe in with the nose, breathe out with your mouth, and you are done. Okay? Let's go. Breathe in. Out. Breathe in. Out. Last one. Breathe in. Out. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Good morning and welcome to your world as you continue to settle into your new normal. We're here to shine some light on some of the areas of the economy and our lives that have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we focus on refugees and displaced people in Kenya. My name is Joseph Arango, and in our program today, nearly 25.9 million refugees have been forced to flee their homes and countries, with over half of them under the age of 18. This morning we delve into their issues ahead of World Refugee Day on 20th June. Kareo and Ruai residents were up in arms after their houses were demolished a few weeks ago. How are the displaced coping in this season of the COVID-19 pandemic? South Africa's strict lockdown provides a number of challenges for its large migrant community, who've been left with no source of income for weeks during this coronavirus season. Laborers and technicians are working round the clock at the Eiffel Tower so that the Iron Lady can once again welcome the public when it reopens on the 25th of June. This morning we're asking, how best can we safeguard the rights of refugees in Kenya, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic season? We'd love to hear from you. Please send your comments and questions to our WhatsApp line or via our hashtag #NewNormal. But first, let's look at the numbers as far as COVID-19 is impacting the world. And as we speak this moment, around the globe, there is a total of 8,257,885 people who've been confirmed positive for COVID-19. Of these, 4,306,748 have recovered from COVID-19, while 445,986 people have so far died around the world as a result of the disease. That's the global scene. In our own country, Kenya, this is a picture. We have so far 3,860 people who've been confirmed positive for COVID-19, and of these, 1,328 have recovered, while 105 people in Kenya have so far died as a result of the COVID-19 disease. Moving across the East African region, we look at Somalia, where the situation is that 2,658 people have been confirmed positive for COVID-19, 649 have recovered, 88 people in Somalia have so far died. And moving on to other countries in our region, our neighbor to the west, Uganda, these are their numbers. 724 people confirmed positive for COVID-19 in Uganda, 351 have recovered, and so far Uganda has not reported a single death of anyone as a result of COVID-19. That's Uganda. Looking at other neighbors to the south, in Tanzania, this is a situation. These numbers have not changed for nearly a month now. 509 people confirmed positive for COVID-19. And in Tanzania, 183 people have recovered, while 21 people have so far been reported to have died in Tanzania. And our other East African neighbors, this is Rwanda. 636 people confirmed positive for COVID-19. 338 have so far recovered, and Rwanda has reported 2 people who have died as a result of COVID-19. In Burundi, again, where details have been rather scanty, 104 people confirmed positive for COVID-19, 75 people have recovered. 1 person so far has been reported dead as a result of the disease in Burundi. And that's the situation in East Africa, in Kenya, and around the world as far as COVID-19 is impacting on populations across as it ravages the global economy and disrupts lives. Now, an American missionary who ran a children's home in Bomet County for almost a decade has pleaded guilty before a U.S. federal court for sexually abusing young Kenyan girls under his care. Gregory Dow, alongside his wife Mary Rose, fled Kenya in 2017 after various counts of child rights abuse and cruelty to minors under their care became public. And as reports, their actions led to the mysterious death of 3 minors. Dow purported to be a Christian missionary who would care for these orphans. They called him Dad, but instead of being a father figure for them, he preyed on their youth and vulnerability. Prosecutor said in the court filing.
Gregory Dow has admitted guilt for 4 counts of sexually abusing children, girls aged between 11 and 13 who were under his care at the Dow Family Children's Home in Boito-Konoin constituency, Bomet County. 61-year-old Dow reached a plea deal with the prosecution. The prosecution, led by U.S. Attorney Timothy Stengel, argued that Dow used force and coercion to perpetrate the most heinous of crimes, preying on vulnerable children for his own sexual gratification.
How many times were you sexually abused by Mr. Dow?
I was like 3 times.
His wife, Mary Rose, was not arrested with him, but court records show that she was mentioned several times for aiding, abetting, and participating in cruelty to children. The prosecution says that Mary Rose knowingly subjected children to birth control implantation at a local clinic in Mogogo, Shiek. The prosecution submitting that this was aimed at eliminating the possibility of pregnancy. The orphanage had up to 83 children between 2008 and 2017. The children were subjected to the most inhumane conditions by the missionaries, including being denied basic rights. They were never taken to hospital when sick, in the belief that faith would heal them. As a result, 3 children died of various complications. One of them, identified as James, was hurriedly buried in a box here, within the compound, and without a permit or due procedure. Another, identified as Amos Cheerier, died upon being denied medical attention. His family is still seeking answers to this day. Gregory will be sentenced to jail in September 2020 and is likely to serve at least 16 years in prison as a result of the plea deal. This development, some form of relief for the victims. For a man who had earlier been accused of molesting his own daughter in 1996, many wondered how Kenyan authorities allowed him to set up an orphanage in Kenya and take in tens of vulnerable children.
It is clear this guy did a lot of crime in the country, but the government is following laid down procedures.
Dow fled Kenya in late 2017 to escape arrest. Mary Rose, on the other hand, was apprehended and served time in jail, but was released after a few months after paying a fine of 50,000 Kenya shillings. She too fled the country.
Children have for long periods continued to suffer in the hands of those who should care for them. And despite the spike in cases in places that should be safe for them, authorities continue to turn a blind eye to their plight. Tens of thousands of orphans and vulnerable children across the country. Gena Kirori, NTV.
The late Professor Wangari Maathai once said that while Mother Nature was very generous, she's also very unforgiving. Well, these may be words of caution to those that litter and pollute with near reckless abandon. In Ngong, this corruption of once pristine natural places is now a daily occurrence, and residents now fear their paradise is now falling into ruin. Gena Kirori has more.
Sacks of construction material, plastics, and even diapers now line the once green paths that dress the ground here at Ololua Forest. the complete disregard for the environment, a blight for those living near the forest. Stephen Kinyanjui watched as the once primal forest was corrupted by human hand.
Before the construction, the area was, wow, it was a slum cause people used to visit this area, and the area was, even wild animals, gazelle, antelopes, could find them. But now, after the construction, nothing is being found. The nature, it's dead already.
And here at Zambia area in Gong Town, the once clear river that is now carpeted with trash. The only thing more overpowering than the stench of the garbage here is that of impunity.
Nema. They came here, we stood, they said they are going to have to redo the drainage, and they said that they are not going to stop the garbage from being dumped upstream in a town, but up to now they have not done it.
Reverend Joya first moved into the then lush green hills in 1979 and has seen a little problem grow into a big one, as the plastic bottles tossed out of car windows have now been substituted by large garbage trucks dumping trash in heaps.
Always from Dadora. It is brought here. If you start here, you will see lorries coming and going this way, and they are going to come and dump the garbage.
And now, only fond memories hold the place of the glory that the area once held.
The town was not big up there, and there was no garbage, like now there is. And now, when that people started building, and they started also draining their sewers into this small stream, it became big.
The residents now want the National Environmental Management Authority to restore the environment here. Gena Kirori, NTV.
Okay, so this morning, as we look forward to World Refugee Day on Saturday, the 20th of June, we're focusing on the plight of refugees and displaced persons in our own country, Kenya. And to start that conversation, I want to go by telephone all the way to Kakuma to speak to a refugee there, a Congolese refugee by the name of Jesse Inga. Jesse, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to your world.
Thank you.
Okay. How is life for you at the moment?
Life at the moment in the camp is somehow tricky and difficult because, you know, everything is closed and somehow I don't at home without nothing to do. And, you know, everything is somehow pending, like the schools.
Okay, now, Jesse, your line is breaking up, and let me see if we can still carry on with the conversation. If not, we may have to call you back. So, how was life before COVID-19 came along?
Before COVID-19, we were somehow, you know, keeping ourselves busy with schools. We go like teaching. Some of the people who could have jobs with different organizations, they come to provide help to the community. And also kids going around, like education, like studying, or maybe playing around with other kids. You know, just even if we're somehow in another lockdown since we are refugees, but at least we could have these different activities to help us surviving and have a nice mental state. Yeah.
Okay, we're still breaking up, but let me see if I can still hear you a little bit more. Now, we're in the middle of this season. How has your life changed?
My life as a refugee has changed in a way that, let's say, like in a typical day, I have to stay at home instead of going and doing my duty. And like, because I'm an ICT instructor, I don't have to keep cars, but now I'm somehow at home without doing anything, and it has like another effect because I don't have to do anything that's somehow helpful to the community. Instead of, if I'm not that creative, like doing awareness or maybe about how people can keep away from corona or maybe other services that can get, it's somehow challenging, even for other, like in general. When, you know, imagine a place without electricity, without power, like means no TV to keep, to like at least for keeping people busy. tricky to stay at home, no playing material, no, things that can enable people to at least interact and keep idle at home.
Okay, now, Jesse, let's try and phone you back because I want to ask you about the World Refugee. They will disconnect and try to call you back, see whether we can get a better line to Kakma. But thank you for joining us this morning. We'll call you right back. Now, with me in the studio is also Caroline Njoki, who is the Chief Technical Advisor, Education and Jobs at the International Labour Organization. Good morning and welcome to your world.
Very good morning, Joseph.
Now, before we even get into what has brought us here, I always like to inquire of my guests, how has your world changed with COVID-19?
Well, everyone's world, I believe, has changed. But now that you've asked me about mine, it's the normal. I look back at January when, we had so many hopes for the year. We had plans. We... at family level, at very personal level, at the professional level. We didn't see this coming, and I think we were used to, you're used to a normal that you do not think that life can change. Suddenly, we have our children at home. So for even professional women like myself, I don't just have to do my job now, but I have become a mother, I am a caregiver, I am a teacher, not very good at it. And and I'm also we have been teleworking for the last 3 or 4 months. But even going to the store, something that is so normal has become, you have to think about it. You have to don a mask and really think through the sanitization of it. But that's the normal for me. But there is another normal for other people because I have privilege. I have a salary that keeps coming. I can homeschool my child at home. But what about those who work in the informal sector? Those for whom lockdown meant you don't have a job to go to at all anymore. Their new normal it must be really, really tough, So life has changed for everyone. We can't just wake up and travel, which we used to take for granted. I can see my parents in Kirinyaga. I saw them last in February. They are 1 hour away, but I don't see them. And it's a very uncomfortable normal, but one that we have to get used to and sort of nuance our lives now into, this so-called new normal.
And it's a lot worse for people like refugees, such as
Absolutely.
Jesse there, in terms of, I know you run programs to support the refugee. Life must be pretty hard for them at the moment.
It must be. There is the vulnerability that is created by displacement itself. That, if you think about it, leaving home, when we leave home and go on a trip for just 2 days, it doesn't matter whether you are the best sport in the world, you still think of going back home. There's no war because you're going back to stability, you're going back to your family. You know home will be waiting. It's not the same for refugees. Some of them have left for the last, we have generations, like second generations in Kenya. And that is difficult by itself. They've already been uprooted in a different country. And then this, so you can imagine as we struggle with our new normals, their new normal is already double layered, not normal, if you know what I mean. And in terms of survival for refugees, of course, many of them have very limited options for jobs, for livelihoods, for education, and that has been disrupted. We do not have enough infrastructure to support digital learning within refugee camps in Kenya. And even if that was there, do the refugees have the bundles that we need for them to get online, and study like some other children in the country? So that must be tough.
I know you've been running a program trying to encourage and support refugees to be a lot more self-reliant. Now, especially for this season, what does that mean for what you've been trying to do?
That's a good question. It's a new... allow me to just go a little bit back to why this program, it's called the Prospect Program, started. As I've mentioned, refugees find themselves displaced for a very long time. The average differs from country to country. For instance, we had South Sudanese refugees who went back home when peace came to South Sudan, and then 2015 they found themselves back in displacement. And for a very long time, especially in the Horn of Africa and even in Kenya, there were very limited opportunities for refugees to get skills that would actually allow them to transition into the world of work and be self-sufficient. You know, the normal trajectory of life is children go to school, we acquire skills, whether formal or informally, transition into the world of work, start businesses, etc. That was very limited for refugees, and the approach was that humanitarian support was given for very many years. So the world over, we had many more crises, reduced money, reduced funding to keep humanitarian programs going just by themselves. And in 2016, the General Assembly convened in New York and said, we need to change how we support refugees. And it's not just refugees, and I think that it's very important as we speak about refugees, we nuance host communities. Refugees live with local communities who are so generous, who support them, and who are impacted by the new presence of refugees, okay? And we are what kind of impact? Jobs are reduced. They have to share resources. That's just the reality. And so the member states of the UN saw that we need to do things differently. We need to work more with host communities, local governments, and share the burden of hosting refugees. We need to focus more on giving skills to refugees that give them dignity. You know, there is no dignity when people cannot work.
As opposed to just the kind of aid that you pour in, the kind of, you know, humanitarian support that you offer.
Exactly. And that has seen us, so a compact, we had the New York Declaration of 2006 that called for 2 compacts, one that looks at migrants and a global refugee compact. And that one is anchored on supporting host communities, making refugees more self-reliant, but also looking at situations, improving situations in the countries where they came from, you know, peace building efforts, etc., so that when, you know, when things get better at home, they can go back to schools, to hospitals, to, you know, basic social services. And that is the context within which we do this program. It brings us together. We have UNHCR, of course, the refugee agency. We have the ILO. We have UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund. We have newcomers, I would say, IFC, the International Finance Corporation, and the World Bank.
What's been the impact, or how far had you gone actually before COVID struck?
Not too far, and unfortunately, because this launched in 2019. But at the same time, not too far, but we had started assessing approaches. For instance, when we talk about developing skills for refugees and host communities, skills for what jobs? So you have to scan the environment, and the environment is not just the camp itself, because we are talking about creating opportunities for all. Remember the Agenda 2030 call.
But you've also got the additional challenge of already the jobs are scarce.
Exactly.
In the market.
Absolutely. And so the question is, the opportunities for creating jobs by people through setting up enterprises. Let us not forget that up to 80% of jobs in our country, up to more than 80%, are in the informal sector. So if you unpack informal sector, those are the shops where we go to buy bread and vegetable and, you know, small supply businesses that feed into the formal economy. So you have to look at that and look at ways of stimulating local growth so that there are opportunities for both host communities and refugees, because we cannot make the mistake of focusing so much on refugees, of course, at the expense of host communities. But if you know, we have a common saying that if you enlarge the cake, then there is a bigger piece for everyone, other than when there's just a little slice and everyone is trying to compete around that. So so we are looking at what are the opportunities that are available, and then how do we support these, especially young people, to tap into those opportunities. Okay. And we can come to much more of that later.
Indeed, thank you, Caroline. Now, as we look ahead to World Refugee Day on Saturday, we take a moment to celebrate refugees who are on the front lines fighting this pandemic, as well as their hosts and aid workers supporting them. We've seen everyday heroes from all walks of life step up to join the front lines. In that spirit, let's look at what it means to be a refugee.
Refugees are ordinary people who live through extraordinary times. In the country they live in, conflict or persecution have put them at risk. They have no other choice but to flee and to leave their country to seek safety. This means leaving a lot behind, one of the hardest decisions a person can ever take. So what makes a person a refugee? Refugees are no longer in their own country and have crossed at least one border. Ongoing conflict may put them at risk if they return, or they are at risk of persecution because of their nationality, race, or sexual orientation, or because they associate with a religion, a social group, or a political opinion. Some get jailed, or harmed physically, or mentally. Refugees often flee with no more than the clothes on their back and leave behind their everyday life. They may lose their home, their savings, their career, and often their family and loved ones. The journey to safety can be long and full of dangers. During the journey, people can get hurt, and sadly, many lose their lives. All of this can cause severe trauma. Fortunately, there are international laws to protect refugees. Refugees cannot be sent back to their countries if it puts them at risk. Countries have a legal obligation to let refugees in and protect them. But even in a safe country, life as a refugee can be daunting. Refugees may continue to deal with trauma. Some are separated from their family and long to reunite with loved ones. There may be challenges related to adapting to a new environment. Host countries can provide assistance to learn the language and to adapt to cultural and other differences. But when does someone stop being a refugee? Some refugees can return home if the situation in their country becomes safe enough. Others will remain and integrate in their host countries. With the right support, refugees can successfully integrate and make a new life for themselves. Some refugees eventually even become citizens of their host country.
Okay, so Caroline, we've seen in some countries, the US and the UK, where refugees are actually absorbed into the labor market, some who are even actually helping on the front line because some of them have got medical skills and so on. What about the situation here?
It takes time. In my previous life, I worked with African asylum seekers in Berlin, at the German capital. And even then, I can tell you that it really takes time from the point when refugees arrive in a country until the point when they are quote-unquote naturalized, get citizenship, etc. But there are also opportunities for them to work before that. It's, and that also depends on opportunities available, engagement of local authorities, etc. So coming back to the situation in Kenya, we haven't had that. We have refugees, of course, engage in different, I would say, sectors. Most of our refugees in Kenya are not in formal jobs. I mean, I wouldn't say it's even 2%, unfortunately. And you will see why many of them came from agricultural communities when they left home. And we also have a challenge of recognition of skills, So when they leave home, you have a qualification from back home. How do you get that recognized? And then you're able to apply it in your new country. And you also mentioned that, you mentioned that we generally have a high unemployment rate. There are not enough jobs for, I can't even say for everyone. There are very few opportunities. And so many of the refugees and who are hosted in two of Kenya's gazetted camps, that's in Turkana and Garissa counties, pursue you know, opportunities in businesses, in supply, etc. There are those, of course, who go through the schooling system, excel. There are many different scholarships that are availed through UNHCR, etc. And some of them also pay for themselves through remittances. And they go through university or TVET institutions and get into different opportunities. But we do not, I wouldn't say we have that significant mass of refugees that would be rallied, and you know, it's not like in Germany where they say, let's come and support them.
Are we on the journey though?
Yes, and that is exactly what the Global Compact on Refugees is. It is what the ILO in 2017 called, you know, employment for a decent work for resilience. You know, how is it that you know, work is quite central in our lives. We don't realize it, but it is such, it's at the heart of, work is at the heart of social justice. So how is it that we empower people to, you know, bring out the best in them so that they are able to support themselves, but also very importantly, to support the communities in which they find themselves. So the skills building, increasing education opportunities for refugees, that is the path that we are taking, and hopefully it will be a success. We don't know in how long.
What are the challenges for that transition, for that kind of transition to happen?
I will take us back to what led us to the Global Compact on Refugees. And there is something called, we keep talking about it, is burden sharing. If you look at a lot of the refugees globally, they're hosted in the global south, in developing countries, who already are grappling with quite significant development challenges for themselves. So when a country like Kenya hosts, you know, 400,000 plus refugees as of this month, it's you know, it's a population that we have to think about. Of course, there is international support, and that's where we come in. That's where the World Bank comes in, and UNHCR is tasked as a UN agency. And so the challenges that face refugees are, there is the essence of vulnerability, but when they are hosted in developing countries, they also become part of the challenges that the citizens of that developing country have to contend for themselves. So if we took a refugee youth and a Kenyan youth, they have almost common aspirations, but you know, the opportunities and how far they can reach to be able to live their, you know, I would say to get to their aspirations, the challenges are quite similar, although a refugee is displaced.
And so you mentioned also the importance of lifting the host community.
Yes.
How are we doing? So,
we have, you know, improving the local reality is quite key. And if you look at even the two counties where the refugees are hosted in Kenya, these are also counties that, you know, they have a lower level of economic activity, I would use that word, going on. But it doesn't mean that there is nothing. You know, there are, if, you know, we do an analysis of potential sectors that we can develop. I'll give you a good example. In Garissa, the ILO and UNHCR did a market systems analysis, essentially looking at what are sectors that we, you know, would thrive in this county, and not just thrive and bring money to a few people, but that would enable us to rally a critical mass of people to benefit from this. And we identified two, livestock production. When we hear Garissa, we all think, you know, livestock. So that came out. And two is vegetables, because they, you know, they're not able to get vegetables from the rest of Kenya, whereas we have harvest rotting in places like Nyahururu and other places. But then if you think about how do we mobilize business people in Garissa to connect with other parts of Kenya where the harvest is bumper, in so doing, they bring food, but at the same time, they're creating opportunities. Okay. And the same is for livestock. So that's how you look at creating opportunities for both host and refugee
Let me pause there, because I think we can connect now to another refugee. This is Nial Deng. Good morning, Deng, and welcome to Your World.
Hi, good morning to you. Thank you.
Oh, great. It's good to see you. Now, where are you speaking to us from, first of all?
I'm speaking to you from Kakuma refugee camp.
Okay. And how is life? How is life for you there, Deng?
I would say things are a bit normal because you know, as refugees, we normally live under very limited freedoms, and I think this is what we have been living through even before COVID-19. But so far, so good.
Now, before COVID came along, what was life like? Maybe in January, for example.
I think we had freedoms that we didn't have before, like schoolings. We could go to school, we could go to learning center, we could go to community centers, but all this cannot happen now.
So how did things change for you?
Things changed for me in a number of ways. I was a student. I can no longer go to schools, and it is not easy to catch up online because of the limited access to internet.
Okay, and so how are you doing for your life now? What are you doing?
Right now, I'm working with fellow refugee youth. We are running awareness campaign to inform the communities about COVID-19 because, as you know, not so many people in the camp have access to the internet, and this means not so many people will have access to the right information. So we are trying to inform the communities on prevention measures and what they're supposed to do to keep safe.
And what about the general health situation where you're at in this pandemic? How are things?
So far, I think there are 2 confirmed cases in the camp. When we had the first case, like a few weeks ago, there was a lot of panic. People thought like, oh, we are done. This is going to kill over all of us. But I think there have been like great efforts from UNHCR and the Turkana County government and the Ministry of Health. So there's isolation centers and quarantine facilities that are set up in the camp. And so far, movement is restricted out of the camp and into the camp. So anyone coming into the camp is quarantined automatically. And there are a number of people who are now quarantined. And then after that, they're tested. And if they're found negative, and then they're allowed to come into the camp.
And is testing going on? Is testing going on?
Yeah, at the quarantine facilities.
Okay, then stay with us as we continue this conversation. Now, Caroline, going forwards, and you know, what are the plans in terms of you know, bringing this, absorbing, if I can use that word, refugees into the economy, despite the difficulties that we are in?
Yeah, you know, when we have that conversation, absorbing refugees into the economy, there is panic, because citizens will ask, which economy? Is it an economy that does not have jobs for us? And the gentleman from Kakuma who just spoke, he mentioned one thing, that he was going to school. He was being able to go to the community center. Now he's not able to do the same. There are those who are supposed to be in training with the intention to transition, you know, acquire skill and transition to work. And that is not happening. And that's not just for refugees. It is happening with the ordinary Kenyans, of course. And, you know, in the recent ILO COVID monitor, the ILO has been monitoring the impact of COVID on different sectors. And the last one focused on youth. And there is emerging, you know, information on the impact of COVID, specifically on young people. We are all, let us not say that COVID is an equalizer. I feel like that is a fallacy. Because we are all impacted in totally different ways, and that is influenced by where we were before the pandemic in a very big way. And so going forward, it is really thinking, how are we going to transition from this sort of, so that we don't have a lockdown generation, you know, people who are losing opportunities for school, for training, and the job market. So this will have to be wholesome thinking with the counties, you know. What are the thoughts of getting out of the pandemic? What is the recovery like? Because, you know, this is, we will have a lot of post-pandemic building and recovery. And now we have to think of this wholesome. It is not just for host communities and for refugees. We wouldn't want to have that kind of segregation.
Okay, thank you. Now, so what is life like for refugees during this COVID-19 pandemic season? We've been hearing from some of the refugees at Dadaab camp.
Corona has came with the positive problems, especially no movement outside and inside in the Dadaab, especially refugee camps. Second, also the food become expensive. It is very hard for you to get some food. It's not even available. Youth are no in employment on youth side because of coronavirus, and even the students are now currently having a difficult time because they are not having any work to do and anything to do, because some of them, they even started doing mira and other bad activities.
COVID-19 affected me seriously because us as a refugee, we depend on agencies, and the agencies is not working. We are getting service in UNHCR, other agencies, only they are working on distribution side.
Now, currently, obviously, things have been quite disrupted there, as these refugees are describing in Dadaab.
Yeah.
You talk of recovery. Where do you actually begin that journey? Or when do you actually even begin that?
So I'm not sure, whether there is, there's that specific point that we say now we are talking about recovery. For some businesses, recovery is already beginning. But it will be recovery in terms of coping with the reality that we have now. I'll tell you, there are some refugees who have acquired credit, for instance, from local microfinance institutions. And of course, with the interruption to their business is just as bad as the interruption that other businesses in Kenya have seen. They're discussing how can we restructure my, 20,000 or 50,000 credit so that I pay differently and I can still have some money to keep the stock running. That is already a bit of recovery, because I feel like initially when COVID really was with that, there was that initial panic and we were almost paralyzed and we didn't know what to do. At the same time, of course, we've had to adopt the safety measures, the protocol, etc. But I think now people are starting to breathe a little and gather perspective. Also with the realization, as we are told, especially by our the medical fraternity, that this is our new normal, that we will have to learn how to live with COVID. Many businesses are putting in place return to work measures. I have seen the Federation of Kenya Employers, who is an ILO tripartite partner, already sharing with their affiliate members the procedures you put together to ensure that you can continue running, because we will not close down forever. And President Kenyatta actually said that in his last address. And so building back is already beginning.
And from an ILO point of view, do you see a change in the nature of the labor force, not just in Kenya, but around the world, as actually even post-COVID?
Absolutely. There will be shifts. Definitely there will be shifts. If you look at where the impact has been strongest, it is for instance, in retail, in tourism. I mean, we're in Kenya. Tourism has been affected in a great way. Accommodation. But these are also sectors now, some of the sectors like manufacturing. We've seen factories and the production lines being repurposed from what their core business was to responding, for instance, to COVID. And that speaks to, so that's already a shift, because people have had to acquire a different skill very quickly to respond to this new environment that we find ourselves in. But another thing, digital economy. So many people now, especially those who have access to the internet, many people are relying on delivery services. Many people are not going to the supermarkets anymore. They want to have, those who can, of course, they want to have their deliveries at home. And that's a whole new sector that is opening up that we didn't have in the same scale as we have now. And there will be, you know, we talk about the future of work. What does the future of work look like? Does it look like what we are going through now, where we will have, especially in the formal sector, less working from offices and, you know, working remotely? But then what about the informal sector? What does it mean? Because many in the informal sector, where refugees are, do not have the leisure of working from home. So how will that look like? How do we support them to navigate through this new reality that is upon us in the world?
Is there a danger because of that shift that they too might be left behind, because they were already behind the rest of society in terms of the host community especially?
And that is why we should ensure that we do not leave them behind. Let us go back to the 2030 agenda. It is not leaving anyone behind, but also ensuring that those are the farthest are also reached first, and looking at why they are remaining so further back. You know, so we have to be very deliberate. For instance, through application of social protection, there are people who have lost incomes. You know, how can we include them to the extent possible to social protection measures that allow them an income so that they survive, as we see where we will get to with COVID? That is how you ensure that you're not leaving anyone behind. In education, the same way. How do we ensure that we try as much as possible to reach those children with radio or with whichever other means to deliver an education? We should be very careful that those who are already so much behind do not even think you know, just way further behind. That would really be a sad situation.
Okay, and although today we're talking about refugees, we also are bearing in mind that there are internally displaced people or people who've lost their homes for one reason or another. Now, a month ago, the Ministry of Water and Sanitation and Irrigation moved in to try and move people who had been occupying land that the ministry said it needed. They wanted to reclaim over 2,700 acres of land in Ruai, and the land was meant for the development of sanitation facilities for Nairobi County and its environs. It was occupied by construction workers and Chinese developers who were evicted as bulldozers began digging trenches to secure the piece of land. This is how NTV reported the story when it happened.
Tired and cold, this expectant woman's expectations to have a home for her and her unborn child were shattered when bulldozers pulled her house apart in the dead of the night. She is among dozens of families kicked out of a place they called home in Ruai as government embarked on another round of night demolitions to reclaim public land.
Kama saizi kuna mvua, mimi niko na watoto, niko na mtoto miezi 11, tulilala naye hapa kwa baridi, mvua pia ndio hii inanyesha.
They now have to brave another cold and rainy night. The government started evicting hundreds of people who had bought property next to a disputed 3,000-acre piece of land to pave way for the expansion of the Dandora sewage treatment plant in Ruai, Nairobi.
Hatukatai, lakini tulisikizana na PS wa lands Bwana Peter Muraguri ya kwamba hakuna mtu yeyote atakuja kubomolewa manyumba kwa sababu walikubali kututoa hapa kutupeleka kwingine. So tulikuwa tunangoja tutolewe, tupeleke kwingine, tutoe vitu zetu polepole, tukwenda mahali hapo.
About 5,000 families were left homeless on the 4th of May when the Nairobi City Water and Sewerage Company demolished their houses to reclaim allegedly grabbed land. The company went on to bring down the houses despite a court order issued by Justice Okongo a day earlier stopping the demolitions.
Na waserikali ifuatage orders. Kama wamesaviwa, warudise orders na wabei. Kwa sababu wasipofuata order, mimi sifikiri hata kuna haja kushika vijana wanaiba masimu huko town.
Doing it at night without even prior notice, that shows malice in this government. And that is our main concern. It's our main concern.
The night demolitions have drawn public condemnation as the country battles the coronavirus pandemic. But these destitute families only want a roof over their heads during this particularly difficult season. Eunice Omolo, NTV.
Okay. Okay, so those are the internally displaced. We'll come to speak about them in a moment. But coming back to the changing labor force in Kenya, around the world, what kind of trends is ILO predicting, and what kind of steps are you even proposing to, for the future, for the new normal?
Good question. There will be, if you look at the latest projections on loss of employment, it's worrying, and it's something that governments the world over are thinking about. And considering we are not out yet, we don't even know when we'll be completely out. And the ILO has looked at loss of jobs from how many hours per day or per week have workers lost since, we've been looking at since March, for instance, and equating that now to full employment. And we're already at 300 million.
Around the world.
Around the world. And of course, the impact is even dire in the developing, in the global south where we are. And so there will be, one of the areas that the ILO is also working on is how do countries stimulate so much employment to take on board those that have lost their jobs in the last 3-4 months and coming. But at the same time, let's remember, we still had those that were out, And so adopting strategies that promote employment at scale is going to be very key. And I can give you one example. Infrastructure development, construction. These are sectors, for instance, that traditionally have supported employment creation during post-crisis phases. Why? Because they take up a lot of workforce. In Kenya, for instance, we have initiatives by the government like Kazi Mtaani or Vijana Mtaani, where we are mobilizing our young people to support in water and sanitation. It's urban hygiene, if we were to call it that. We're going to think of more of those, because now employment creation, it cannot be for 10 or 15. It has to be for hundreds of them.
You have to think of the masses.
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
Caroline, we'll be right back. Now we'll take a short break. We'll be right back with more on this focus on refugees.
I want to be famous like Tupac. So my words can have an impact. Innovation, a source of motivation for the kids in Africa. A refugee boy from Kakuma, but where do I start? Because being a refugee is not a walk in the park. It's like I'm stuck in the dark. Your dreams are valid. I never lose hope. Mama said, build yourself and one day you're going to fly away like Tony Stark. There's nothing for something. With these words come hard work and persevering, the effort. Success is a no man's land. This is me. This is me. I'm lifting up who I was designed to be. Necessity make the being. Yes, it's necessary to pull up in a century. Necessity make the being and that being make me. They say he's a refugee. His story is not supposed to make it. But being a refugee does not define me. It's what inside me. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. Trying to be the best version of me. Young refugee stuck on a one-day island, like one day I'll be on TV like Oprah, stuck by TMZ, followed everywhere from the garden to the corporate. One day I want to be a pilot. One day I want to be filled with rich, spending vacation in Copacabana. One day, just one day I'll be stress-free, sitting down, developing and doing yoga. But when one day turned into someday, and someday turned into lost hope, and lost hope turned into broken soul, leaving young refugees with a broken goal. Young refugees getting old before they achieve their goals. Young refugees getting old before they make it to the pot of gold. I have a dream. I'm not talking about Martin Luther King. Don't ever give up. Lift your head up. Sing and pray that you make it through the scheme for you to achieve. This are dreams of a refugee boy, Dave.
Okay, stories by refugees, told by refugees. The project is called Refu Poet. We'll hear more from them in a second. But first, residents of Kareo Chief were up in arms a few weeks ago after their houses were demolished by officers from the county government. It's alleged that over 700 families have been occupying a piece of land that is owned by the Nairobi Water and Sewage Company. According to the residents, some of them have title deeds for the controversial piece of land. The residents said that demolitions put them at a higher risk of contracting COVID-19 due to the lack of basic necessities to keep the virus at bay. The residents wanted the Nairobi governor to intervene and ensure they have a roof over their heads. Okay, so that was the situation in Kariobangi not too long ago. And I'm joined now by the government spokesperson, Colonel Cyrus Oguna. Good morning, Colonel.
Good morning,
welcome,
Joseph, and thanks for inviting me to the show.
Welcome to your world.
Thank you so much.
Okay, now let's start. We're focusing on refugees, but let's start right here with maybe people who, first of all, been displaced from their own homes in Kenya. What's the latest as far as government is concerned about these people who ended up becoming homeless?
The government is really very concerned about the situation that we just referred to. And indeed, when it did happen, the government did form a committee to be able to investigate why that happened at the time that it did happen. Of course, we are aware that it did happen at a time when we are combating COVID and a time that the country is also experiencing very cold weather. So if at all it had happened, it ought to have happened perhaps earlier or even later. But it did happen when it happened, and the government is not very happy with that, and therefore it formed a committee to be able to investigate the whole incident. But it must also hasten to add that, you did mention that some of them did have or do have title deeds, and that is something that is part of what the investigation should be able to unearth, because it is known that that land has been owned for quite some time by Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company, and it was land that had been earmarked for expansion of various, infrastructural development in as far as sewer and water infrastructure is concerned in Nairobi town.
And Colonel, any help to these people who are affected and had to sleep out in the open?
Of course, the Nairobi Metropolitan Service has been working out something to be ensure that they have been assisted, and particularly in as far as the containment measures against COVID are concerned, like the provision of face masks, the provision of sanitizers where necessary, but also ensuring that they have a place to put up before they can be given a more permanent place.
Okay, and now talking about refugees generally, which Kenya is a big host of, large refugee population, what steps has the government been taking to keep them safe, first of all, during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Refugees really are people like us. They live in homes within the various camps, and the measures that the government has put in place in any other settlement are the same measures that have been put in place in the refugee camps. The measures to ensure that they are able to maintain social distancing, that they are able to wash their hands, that they are able to ensure that there is no gatherings, and also to ensure that there is no interaction with people coming in and out of the camps. And therefore, all the camps that we have are currently under restriction of in and out of movement into the camps and out of the camps. So those are measures that have ensured that there are no, or growing numbers of infection within those camps, and that has really helped quite a bit.
Okay, and now the refugees we are speaking to obviously say that life has changed for them, just like for other Kenyans with this COVID-19 season. Is there a danger that they might be further marginalized or left behind as society rushes to recovery?
When the economy opens up, certainly it will also open up for the refugees. But remember, this is a special group of people that have, are running away from various, challenges in their countries, And they've been put there so that they can be provided all the services that may require as arrangements are being done or being made on how they can either go back when they're ready, or for those who may want to go to, may relocate to other parts of the world. And therefore, services that every Kenyan enjoys are also offered to them, under certain, conditions. So there is now not really, true to say that when the economy opens, the country opens for other, engagement, that they will be marginalized, because they have already been put in a situation whereby they get all the services that are required, using various agencies and partners that have been working to ensure that they are taken care of.
Okay, Colonel, thank you. Just stay with us for a moment as I turn to my guest in the studio, Caroline. Just on this, maybe call it disparity when the economy does eventually open up. What are some of the steps to make sure that the refugee community is not left behind?
Thank you. As the government spokesperson has mentioned, I think the importance is ensuring that as we recover, it is a collective recovery and one that does not leave anyone behind. And opening up means a restoration of a lot of the services that were happening in the camps themselves. It means that refugees, entrepreneurs will go back to their businesses, welding, and the resources that they're also using to ensure that they protect themselves, including buying sanitizer, buying masks. Of course, those resources then can also be pulled back to support their incomes. And so these are, a restoration of services is going to be very key. And also just refugees going back to normal businesses, children resuming school, for instance, those who are gaining skills, whether they are in informal apprenticeships, learning 1 to 3 skills, can go back to that. They can go back to getting goods from their suppliers across the country, and just, it's communities bouncing back. And as I had mentioned there before, these global movement towards ensuring that the impacts of displacement on communities that host them is addressed. This will continue, because there is definitely an economic impact, but also a social impact. So building cohesion within host and refugee communities, that is part of the recovery. That will be very, very important as well.
Okay, now, Colonel Oguna, now moving on to other general matters, the society is looking forward to when the economy eventually reopens, schools, places of worship, and so on. Can you give us a sense of what the planning is, or what the thinking is from government in terms of gradually reopening these other places that are still restricted?
Thank you very much. Indeed, the government's desire is to have the economy back on its feet, to have social interaction and engagement, go back to normal. But certainly we must also appreciate and understand that these are not necessarily normal times. So even as we look forward to, easing up of some of the restrictions, or most of the restrictions, but we must also take cognizance of the fact that these times are different from where we were before, and the likelihood that we'll go back into, normal life that we enjoyed before COVID may take a bit of time. So even as the country looks forward to easing of the restrictions, we must also take into account that even as we open up, there will be certain conditions. And those conditions are actually be meant to be able to protect lives of Kenyans. So indeed, as of now, there are committees that are doing assessments, they're doing evaluations of where we have come and where we are, and also looking at whether really Kenyans have been able to take in various containment measures to become part of their everyday lifestyle, that when eventually things, resemblance of normalcy is restored, we will not necessarily undermine the gains that we have so far been able to achieve in as far as COVID-19 pandemic is concerned.
Colonel, from a government point of view, what would you say has been perhaps the biggest challenge of managing this pandemic in Kenya?
Indeed, when initially, the we rolled out the various interventions. We are actually looking at ensuring that it does not get into the country. But eventually, it missed the bullet, and it got into the country, and now we're talking about community infection, that it is actually embedded within various communities. So one of the first challenges really is, first of all, to get everybody else on board to be able to strictly observe the containment measures. It has been a bit of a challenge because some of us, may not necessarily, be compliant, with these containment measures. And therefore, our challenge as government is to ensure that everybody is supposed to understand that it is not necessarily a fight that has to be, spearheaded by government. It is a fight that must be spearheaded by the people themselves, and the government really just to coordinate that fight, right? So when everybody else now begins to understand the importance of ensuring that they can be able to put mask all the time, that they are able to maintain social distancing, that can be able to wash their hands, quite often, and when able, they can be able to sanitize. Those are the various interventions that are necessary for this. But moving forward also, because I did mention about community infection, that some of our facilities, were not up to the scratch to be able to deal with the rising numbers, and therefore facilities, healthcare facilities is also a challenge, and the government is doing everything to ensure that they are being upgraded and at a level where they can be able to take up, numbers should the numbers surge within the communities.
And going forward, do you foresee a situation where the government might be forced to use as much force as it did to make the citizens comply, which resulted in a lot of police brutality?
This is not a question of using force, really. This is a question of, making people understand why they have to do what the government is asking them to do. Indeed, matters of health and matters that must start with the person himself or herself. And therefore, in terms of enforcement, the only enforcement that is required is, should come from the person himself, all right? If you are asked to obtain, to be able to observe social distancing, you don't require a police officer to tell you to do that. If you're asked that it's important for you to wash your hands, you don't need a police officer to, to ensure that you have done that. Putting on mask, that should not be, an action that requires enforcement. It's an action that just simply requires behavior change. The same way when you move out of your house and you've left your mobile phone behind, you may feel a bit vulnerable, so you go back and get the phone. And we are also trying to ask our people to feel the same way when they leave face masks behind into their house, that they can go back and get the face mask. Once we get that level where we can, this measure can become part of our everyday lifestyle, then certainly we'll be able to achieve so much.
Now, we've noticed so far, Colonel, that there's been no mention in terms of when movements in and out of Nairobi and to other counties might happen. Does that mean that that will be perhaps the last thing that the government does?
Remember, Nairobi has got the most number of infections, and for a good reason, because this is where we have got the largest population of our people, and also because this is where the infection started, right? But there's a committee that every day is evaluating and looking at development and advising on what action needs to be taken. So as to whether there'll be further restriction, or easing restriction, is not necessarily for me to decide. It is for this committee to look at the various aspects of the containment measures, and they will be able to advise appropriately on what action needs to be taken. So there's a committee, and not just a one agency committee. It's actually a multi-sector committee that is made up of different players from different sectors of the economy.
And then, is the government satisfied that we are where we should be in terms of perhaps the predictions and the projections of managing this crisis?
If you did recall, really the earlier projection was that we are going to be at about 10,000 by end of April. Now we are heading to toward the end of June, and we're not even hitting, we're just about 4,000. And therefore, the containment measures that the government has put in place have largely contributed to where we are today, and we can actually say that it has worked. It would have been different if those containment measures had not been put in place. And therefore, even though we have not necessarily gotten where we wanted to be, where everybody is on board, all of us are actually obeying these containment measures, and they become part of our everyday lifestyle. But we must say that we have done extremely well. And kudos to the Kenyan people for being fully behind the government as far as this fight is concerned.
Okay, and one more from me, Colonel. You're discussing about reopening places of worship, schools and so on. Some Kenyans are thirsty for a beer in the pub. No mention about bars.
Yes. The minister was very clear that for the restaurants that sell food and sell beer, that as you go in to buy food, you can also be served beer. But places that serve beer only, those places are still closed. There has been no revision of that. That still remains. But nonetheless, you can actually be able, if actually dying for a beer, there are beers that are being sold at supermarkets. Supermarkets open, so you can go into a supermarket, buy a beer, and go and take it from your home. The whole idea is to reduce the chances of people coming together, to reduce creating an environment that can be able to facilitate infection. And therefore, by closing those places that sell beer, is to ensure that we are able to limit an environment that can be able to bring people together so that we achieve the requirement of social distancing. So yes, for those who are currently thirsting for beer, it is not completely out of reach. Go to a supermarket, buy beer, take it home, and you take it from home.
Colonel, those who drink say the beer in the house, the beer in the bar does not taste the same.
We are thank you so much for that. But look at it this way. This is a matter of health. Not just protecting you, but also protecting the loved ones around you. So indeed, really, beer has never been known to be medicine. If it was, certainly, the government would not have, decided that all those, joints that sell beer be closed down. But certainly, nobody has been known to succumb because of lack of beer, and therefore, we're only requesting them to be a little bit more patient, to be able to obey the containment measures, to work with the government, and certainly, yes, all those places that they are missing will be open. But they must be able to obey the containment measures and support the government to be able to make decisions that can be able to make them then begin to enjoy their water.
And Colonel, as you know, the English Premiership, which a lot of people are looking forward to, resumes today. And the best place to watch these games, again, is in a bar.
The best place to watch English Premier League is in a bar. But I'll also tell you this. There are things that you will lose nothing if you forgo them for a while. But once life is lost, you can never reconstitute life. So what is important? To go and watch an English Premier League in a bar and then catch an infection that may actually make you become past tense, or you rather wait for a while, let things stabilize, and then get a chance to watch your favorite team. So my advice to our people is this, is that a life once lost can never be recovered. However, a match that is missed can still be watched later on when there's a replay. So really, life is more important than watching Premier League.
In other words, Kano, you're not about to relax the rules for sports lovers.
No, I'm saying that there's a committee that's looking at everything, holistically, economically, socially, all aspects of our society. And that committee, will be able to come up with a recommendation, and that recommendation now will be able to be used to form decisions that will be made moving forward. And therefore, I'm only saying for now, before that committee gives forward its recommendation, is that our people should be able to value life much more than English Premier League. Because certainly a match can be replayed, a match can be watched later, but again, if you missed one, there's another one that will be on the way coming. But your life, once your life is gone, it is gone, and it can never be replayed, it can never be recovered.
Okay, and Kano, back to focus on the refugee. As we head towards World Refugee Day on the 20th of June on Saturday, what would be your word to refugees in Kenya who are watching this program at the moment?
I can only ask them that it is important to work with the government to be able to obey the containment measures. I understand and we know that the refugees, all the camps are under restriction of movement in and out, and that is done for a good reason, to ensure that in case there is anybody who is infected within the camp, that he does not take the infections out of the camp and there's nobody to bring in infection into the camp. So these measures may be a bit uncomfortable, we understand, but we are asking them that they have been put there purposely to protect lives of refugees who are our brothers and sisters for as long as they're in our country here. So mine is to ask them to continue observing those measures, to continue working with the government and the various agencies within those camps, including the County Emergency Response Committee, so that we all move together and be able to contain this pandemic.
Kano, thank you. Let me turn to you, Deng. You're a refugee yourself in Kakuma. Are you encouraged by what you're hearing from government? Hello, Deng, can you hear me?
Yes, hello?
Yes, I was just wondering, I'm not too sure how much you heard about that conversation with the government spokesman. Are you encouraged by what you're hearing?
Yes, I think it is impressive. Yeah, I think when it comes to refugees, everyone has a role to play, especially the government and the private sector, to make sure that, refugees do not just survive, but also thrive. So I think they have a very significant role to play, in making sure refugees are self-reliant and, they're able, to rebuild their life and thrive again while they are in Kenya.
Now that we can hear you quite clearly, again, what are your challenges as refugees, especially, for example, in Kakuma? What are the challenges you're facing?
There are several challenges that we face on a daily basis. Coming to the high number of people in the camp, coming to the restriction we have daily, and then coming again to challenges with COVID-19, the fact that social distancing is impractically impossible in the camp. You live in a compound with so many other people, you cannot easily maintain your social distance. You share a tab with 100 people, and then you don't have enough access to water, you don't have enough access to soap. And then, this is not easy to cope with.
So you say that that's quite a big challenge there. Are people wearing masks?
Yes, so refugees have taken the lead. So we have refugee businesses across the camp producing masks made from unmade local fiber called kitenge. So when you go to the back end now, you'll find a high number of people have masks.
So with a shortage of soap, how are you sanitizing?
So people are trying to prevent themselves with what they have. We also have refugee businesses. We have social entrepreneurs like Innocent producing soap, which have been distributed across the camp, and some agencies have been able to partner with them to make sure more people have access to the soap that is producing. So people are just trying to prevent themselves with what they have at hand.
And then which kind of businesses are doing well as far as refugees are concerned?
Pardon, I didn't get that question well.
Which kind of businesses are doing well?
Generally?
Yes. That are succeeding.
So there are several businesses that are succeeding in the camp. Like we have more than 2,000 refugee-owned businesses across Kakuma, and they sell commodities ranging from clothes, electronic things to do with soaps. They have a private health facility that are run by refugees. So I would say there are different, type of businesses that are thriving in the camp.
Okay, thank you, Deng. Just stay with us. Jesse, good morning again. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, you're much more clearer now. And again, for you, what are your expectations in this season?
My expectation in this season of, Corona is somehow disturbing the situation, but, we know that everything that has a beginning, it has also an end. We expect that at least that something will come out of it, and then we'll be over this situation so that we can go back again to our daily lives like the way we were before.
So what are you looking forward to most, maybe when COVID is over?
For now, because I work with other refugees in the camp, and we know that UNHCR and other organizations, they're trying to do like the refugee inclusion, and we'd like them to continue. We expect that we'll continue the refugee inclusion in all the level, like even if we can talk, we can speak on behalf of refugees, but also they can include us in like on decision making, but also on project implementation when we resume activities. We can also have their support and their project, as we can also be able to implement their amends. Yeah, to help more refugees.
Okay, thank you so much, Jesse, for joining us. Let me come to you, Deng, for a quick word, final word from you. Deng, you can still hear me?
Yes, I can still hear you.
Okay, we've got our government spokesperson, Kanologuna, still with us. What would you like to say to the Kenyan government?
I would say first, thanks, for hosting us and for allowing us to rebuild our life again in Kenya. So I think the government has supported a lot, but I believe there are more to do, especially coming to our freedoms to move and access to employment. I feel like there's so many young people like myself in the camp, who have a lot to offer to this country, but with the restriction, on movements, with the restriction on access to jobs, I think this, restrict us on how much we can contribute to this country. So I think there's a lot we have to offer. We are not just passive recipient of aid. We have seen refugees stepping up and, contributing to the economy of Turkana County, but not just Turkana County, the whole country. So I think with more, better policies, I think we are more able, to contribute a lot to this country.
Okay, thank you very much, Deng. Kanologuna, refugees from Kakuma saying they're willing and able to support nation building. I don't know what word you have for them.
Yes, but before I answer that question, let me just put it this way, that where refugees are, certainly we understand their challenges with regards to space, but certainly they are better off than even some of our informal settlements, as far as space, when it comes to combating COVID is concerned. So really, we should look at them as just another, estate or another commune that are facing challenges in as far as where they live as a family is concerned. But in terms of the houses, they are better spaced out than even some of our informal settlements. Now, coming to the question that you did ask, yes, indeed, these are our brothers and sisters. They are in our country here, courtesy of generosity as a people. We have been so kind, so warm to all of them, not just in Kakuma, but even in other, refugee camps in Dadaab. And they're all, manners of, nationalities from across the entire region. And what you can tell them that is, yes, for as long as they're here, the government will do everything possible to ensure that their lives, their well-being is taken care of, and of course, following the procedures that have been laid out, that manage refugees' affairs, and various relevant government agencies that have been mandated to be able to deal with the refugees' affairs, they will be given any kind of support that they require. And if they a question of getting employment, certainly, there are protocols that have been put in place to be able to govern that. So they should feel very welcome and continue staying in this country.
Kanologuna, my final question to you before we let you go. At a personal level, what do you look most forward to after COVID, when COVID is over?
Indeed, even after COVID is over, certainly things will never go back to normal, Brother Joseph. Things will take a long time before they can get back to normal. But the good news is that a lot of things that perhaps we did not necessarily even think we could be able to do ourselves, we are now doing them. We are much more, hygienically positioned than we were before. We are, being able to manufacture most of the things locally today that previously were importing. We are certainly importing face masks. Today we are actually, making them here. We were, importing PPEs, we are making them here. And a lot more other things that we were not able to do before, we are doing them, today. So really, like we can say that every dark cloud always has a silver lining. And you can see that it has taught us many, many things, that being self-reliant is the way to go. And we must therefore encourage all those innovators, young Kenyans who are, in different sectors of this economy to begin to look inwardly what they can be able to do to be able to build our economy by coming up with new innovations, by coming up with new ways of doing businesses, by coming up with creative ideas that can be funded or that can be supported to be able to move this country to the next level and to ensure that we are able also to export some of those ideas to the neighboring countries.
Okay, Colonel, if you can remove your hat as a spokesperson for a minute, is there one thing that you miss because of COVID and you look forward to personally?
It is not easy to remove the cap of being a government spokesperson. Honestly, it's not possible. And I'm saying this because really I have been in the military, and all my life as a young person and now as a mature adult person, maybe just somebody who is retired, has been in public service. And therefore, my number one priority always is service to our people. My number one priority is always national interest in everything that we do. Everything that I do has always been, putting our people first. And that will always be something that I'll pursue even out of this office.
Okay. Colonel, I will not get a clear answer from you on this one, but thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Really grateful, and stay safe yourself.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll take a short break. We'll be right back with more on Your World.
They gave a name to the bullet that took his mother's breath away. They called it Stray. So they said it was a mistake and showed up at her funeral with 21 guns and strayed 21 bullets into the insolent, death-drenched skies that only stared back in a grey haze, a soldier's salute of death, they said. Told he was that the syllables to his name were the final foldings of her tongue as her final breath escaped her troubled lungs. Hush, child, hush. See, from ashes she came, to ashes she escapes, the priest had said as her remains sank 6 feet into the dirt. They gave a name to the shouts and pouts and bouts of casual sex. They called it YOLO. They convened in nightclubs dressed in skimpy skirts, sagged jeans, and danced the remainder of the night away in the center stage of what they wanted to believe was fun. So they gave a name to the child that was almost born in the splintering seconds of yesterday. They called it abortion, baptized it contraception. They pulled him from the warmth of his mother's womb, too proud of the mother's stable state of health that they could not hearken their ears to the sound of this child, begging, pleading, asking for that one chance to live life one day at a time. They gave a name to the consequences of their actions. They called it guilt, baptized it depression. They walked around marketplaces with their heads bent in dejection. They could not fathom the weight of society putting down its pain, its judgment, its resentment upon their heads.
Okay. Robin,
yes.
Thank you very much indeed. So I'm joined by these two guys from Refu Poet, Robin Omeka, yes, who's just given us that short spoken word piece. And we also have Ajok Makwe, who's a refugee from South Sudan. In Kakuma, or where are you?
Kakuma refugee camp.
Kakuma refugee camp. Yeah. Okay. Robin, first of all, yes, what is Refu Poet all about?
So Refu Poet is about giving refugees a safe space to tell their stories. You realize in the refugee space, there are so many organizations dealing with education, healthcare, provision of other essential services, but there's a huge gap when it comes to how refugees relate the stories of their human condition. So Refu Poet is a way to bridge that gap so that over and above the provision of all these other essential services, we are able to allow them to tell us their stories, where they come from, what they feel, how they process information, what they would like to be changed, how they commune with each other. Essentially, the power of a story is what Refu Poet is about. Okay, so Ajok, what kind of stories have you been telling through poetry or through spoken word?
I think I've been telling authentic stories. The kind of stories that media industry don't tell. Westerners, including our own media industry. So I've been telling generally refugee stories, including my own country stories.
What is your story? I know you're from South Sudan. What story are you telling about yourself?
What story am I telling about myself? Especially now that I'm here. I was born here. That's what a lot of people don't know. I was born here, and the fact that it is not generally recognized, not by Kenyan government, neither by by the native who are the host community.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's your link still with South Sudan?
Well, I still go back. I'm still a citizen so far. It's a blood thing. It can never go away. And I'm originally from there, even though I was born here.
What's the biggest concern at the moment amongst refugees? If they were to tell a collective story, in Kakuma, for example, what would be the one theme that they would talk about?
The one thing they will talk about, they will tell you, I am just as you, but, excluding opportunities that you people have, but they're just like you.
Okay. For you, Robin, what kind of stories have you been hearing from other poets who are involved in this?
So a huge part of the stories we get are stories of how it's important, or it's almost always attached to, there's a detachment between how people process the refugee story vis-a-vis the citizen story, when essentially refugees are people who came from places where they had TV like we do, they had schools that they went to, they had marketplaces, they had homes. The only difference is that they had a couple of stochastic events that led them to be refugees in other countries. And so the tag refugee takes a lot away of the humanity that is part of them, which we are trying to help them and people like myself who are citizens identify with.
Okay, and a quick one for you, Ajok. How has COVID-19 impacted on the lives of refugees as far as you know?
I think my family still live there. I am studying here in Nairobi. And before COVID-19, let's say, we had lived under the restrictions that are being enforced right now.
Okay.
Because I think we had curfew before even COVID-19. We had lockdown before even COVID-19. And as I was listening to Honorable Cyrus saying, the spokesperson, saying that this is the safest time, like refugees are the most safest at the moment. Yes, it's true, but the restriction has been there, but they had hardly make it. Now they have generally make it harder, much harder than it was before.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Ajok. And Robin, just stay with us as we pause from our current world to look at what else is going on in the other world. Now, laborers and technicians are working round the clock at the Eiffel Tower so that the Iron Lady can once again welcome the public when it reopens on June the 25th. Indeed, there's a little rejuvenation going on. We're preparing the Eiffel Tower for June 25th for its opening. And so we are repainting it. We're putting our elevators back on. We are, getting kits ready. We're putting markings on the floor, signage to welcome our visitors in the best conditions. The paint, the elevators, what we're replacing are budgets that amount to several million euros, tens of millions of euros even. And so indeed all these are substantial budgets, and at the same time we are earning a little less money at the moment. It has to be said with the closure of the tower, so we have to find our visitors quickly, and in particular at the local visitors, the Parisians who love the tower, the people of Ile-de-France, as well as the French who are very attached to the tower, and we would like to welcome them with open arms.
Et là, vous voyez, et là, ils l'ont pas encore sorti celui-là.
Vous voyez, tout à l'heure j'étais jusque là auparavant avec vous, j'avais pas regardé.
Ah,
Si
bah
j'avais
voilà.
regardé.
Ah, c'est génial.
Okay, so grade 7 students at Johannesburg City Kids Pre and Primary School share how they feel about the coronavirus life during lockdown and their socially distanced return to school. If you get it, experts say the chances of you dying are like about 52 to 50%. But for kids, the chances of dying are like 2% because kids have a strong immune system, but others don't have a strong immune system. So that means when coronavirus gets you, the chances of you dying when you have a weak immune system, well, you'll surely die. Those are the words of Katso Mosime, a grade 7 student.
Coronavirus is a disease that belongs to the virus's family.
It is a ball shaped with a little bit of spikes.
It's a virus that spreads through droplets.
I am scared of the virus because I might get infected with the virus and then I could spread it to the people I live with.
It really kills, and I've heard on the news how many people it has killed, how many people are infected.
I'm not scared because I know I have a very strong immune system and I've been taking vitamins since I was young. And I've been eating a lot of oranges, like I mostly eat all of the oranges in the house. Well, the lockdown made my life boring, but then I entertained myself by watching TV and reading a few books.
Staying at home, not going outside to meet your friends, not going to see your family members. It was really boring for me.
I felt lonely because I was not able to spend most of the time with the people that I love.
In lockdown, for the first few weeks, it felt normal. But when we started online lessons, it really hit me that, yeah, I really need to go back to school. I need to play my sports. I need to do my things like a regular child.
Lockdown really inspired me to learn new things like cooking and baking. I can now bake a lot of things.
But it was a long break. Oh, and I really miss school. I missed it a lot.
I did a lot.
I missed school.
A lot. I missed learning, I missed my friends and all my teachers.
I missed my friends and my teachers and learning.
I missed my friends.
The views there of students in Johannesburg. Now, a dozen graffiti artists in Senegal finish a mural in the heart of Dakar that pays tribute to Black pride in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. The wall tells the history of the African people here in Africa, in Europe, in the United States, and all over the world. In a way, it is also to relate to speak, to give back, to pay tribute to those who have marked Black people, to those who did something, those who made the ultimate sacrifice for the African people. Okay, now, Caroline, let's come back to you as we head towards the close of our program. As far as ILO is concerned, what kind of world are they predicting when we eventually get into recovery or post-COVID?
Wow, what type of a world? It's definitely going to be a changed world, and it's a world that we're already living in. Now, I don't think we'll wake up and it's different. It's already so significantly different. For the world of work, we would have to be very creative, deliberate, and not just for refugees, but generally. You know, how do we actually pull ourselves out of this that has happened anyway? How our economy is going to not just survive, but thrive, hopefully, not in 10 years, but in 2-3 years. And that, of course, takes very deliberate measures. You know, how about the people? How do people get back to jobs? We've suffered unemployment in Kenya as businesses closed. They couldn't just sustain. So how do we, you know, bring back people to employment? Because it means food on the table. You know, when we talk about employment, we have to unpack what that means. It means being able to support children, being able to put food on the table, but also being able to pay taxes, because that is how governments run.
And a lot of countries, you say,
yeah,
almost every country in the world has reported job losses or certainly reduced incomes.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any idea, especially from your organization, as to how long it will take to get the world back on its, the world of work back on its feet, and therefore the economies of the world?
How long it will take? I think that is already, you know, governments around the world are trying to, governments and businesses, I mean, businesses are really, really important in recovery, not just in terms of getting people back, but also in, you know, pushing up the levels of taxes that they pay to our governments to keep public services running. And I think what many are working on now is trying to look at that, how do we get back? Maybe not at full capacity, but the capacities allowed by the circumstances that we have to function by right now.
So definitely a very long journey.
It is a long journey, and there's a lot of learning that is happening as we go on. And
right.
Just very quickly, we are thinking at the ILO, for instance, how do we support small businesses to bounce back? In Kenya, we are thinking of a challenge that would help businesses to reboot, you know, take it from where you left, and let's see how we can grow it bigger, earn you more income, increase productivity, etc. But that's still, we don't know how long that will take, really. Yeah.
Caroline, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning, as well as my other guests, Kano Cyrus Oguna a little bit earlier, Robin Omeka, Ajok Makwe, and our refugees who joined us from Kakuma, Jesse Inga, and Neil Deng. Now, did you know that approximately 50% of refugees are under the age of 18, and under international law, refugees are not allowed to be forced back to the countries they have fled? Did you know that global displacement is at a record high, with conflicts becoming more violent and protracted and root causes more complex? At the end of 2018, 70.8 million people were forcibly displaced as a result of persecution, conflict, violence, and human rights violations, double the amount compared to 20 years ago. And did you know that 80% of refugees are hosted by countries neighboring their countries of origin, including some of the world's poorest nations, which hosts 1/3 of all refugees? Only 16% of the world's refugees are hosted in the rich and developed parts of the world. Okay, so now that's what we have time for today, and thank you to our guests. Tomorrow, we take stock of COVID-19 on the African continent. We'll look at how different countries have taken different approaches to tackling the pandemic. What lessons can we learn from one another? And how has the experience of dealing with Ebola been applied to the fight against the new coronavirus? That's our focus tomorrow, starting at 7 a.m. But before that, as always, you can start your day with a great workout at home at 6:30 a.m. in the company of a professional trainer right here in our studio. Until then, stay safe and keep well.